Hey church family, this is Pastor Joe, and we've come to 1 Corinthians in our Read the Book project. This is our 2-year journey as we walk through Scripture together, and so I want to give you just a little bit of background and some things to look for as you read 1 Corinthians over the next couple weeks. The first is that this was written by Paul to the church at Corinth in response to two things. First, Paul had received reports about things happening in the church at Corinth. Second, he had actually received a letter from some of the people at Corinth. And so as a result, Paul writes this book to deal with 11 major issues that are happening in the church. And he writes it really to correct the church, not to inform the church. We know this because Paul uses the phrase, "don't you know," each time he's dealing with correcting an issue that's going on. As if to say, you do know, and you're just not doing it. And so as you read through that, I want you to read through with this view of a pastor or a church planner writing to a church to remind them of what they've been taught, to remind them of what they already know. And so as you read, I want you to look for a couple other things. First, you need to understand about the city that Paul's writing to. Corinth was a new city. It was actually rebuilt after being dormant for centuries by Julius Caesar. As a result, because it was placed in such a strategic area, it became the largest Roman city in Greece. It was a city that was diverse. It was a city that was religiously pluralistic. It was a city, though, that was also morally sketchy. All right, it would be the equivalent to a New Orleans or a Las Vegas in its morals, but it would also be the equivalent to a New York in its size and its diversity of cultures that had gathered there. Now, one of the other things you also need to understand as you read this book is that every ounce of opposition that Paul's addressing is coming from inside the church. In fact, Paul doesn't deal with any opposition from outside the church in Corinth. It's all from inside the church. And so Paul reminds them and writes to them about what it means to be spiritual. In fact, that's really the emphasis of this letter, is what does it truly mean to be spiritual? For the Corinthians, they were assuming that to be spiritual meant that you lived an external life of signs and wonders. And that as long as you could show people you were spiritual, that meant you were spiritual. Paul writes to them to remind them that the gospel says that being spiritual is really an internal decision. That is an internal choice to live a life that is dominated and marked by letting the gospel affect every area of our life. It's about living a gospel-centered life. That's what it means to be spiritual. And so even as you read through this, I want you to think for yourself, what areas of your life are centered around the gospel and what areas of your life aren't centered around the gospel? And if someone had to write to you, would they see someone who's trying to live an external life of showing people that they're spiritual, or someone who's living a life of spirituality on the inside? I hope you enjoy reading this book. It's a hard book to read in moments because of the things that Paul's dealing with, but it's a book that I think really helps us get to the heart of how easy it is for us to become religious and not live a life by the Spirit. I love you, church family. If you have any questions, you can comment below. You can send me a message. If you want to know more about the Read the Book project, you can go to our website at www.starkvillecommunitychurch.org/readthebook, or you can go to our Facebook page, SEC Read the Book, and you'll find comments there. You'll find resources that'll help you, but we would love to have you join us on this journey. I'll see you later.